Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with me, Sifiso Mahlangu. I'm in conversation with the president of the ANC, the head of state, the commander of the armed forces, Mr. Jacob Zuma. We're a few days before the ANC's elective conference, and the president is giving me an exclusive interview. Mr. President, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much. We are happy to be with you and with your viewers.
It's a few days before the ANC's elective conference, and some say this is going to be the feistiest election ever. The gloves are off. As you step down, Mr. President, take us back to your tenure as the president of the ANC and also the head of state. What do you want South Africa to know?
Well, thank you very much for that. I think these South Africans, we will themselves look at what has happened since I became the president. I don't think I could choose on their behalf. It is them who must make their own judgment. I think as a cadre, when the organization gave me this responsibility, I did everything I could within my power and capacity to help implement the policies of the ANC, to bring about a lot of things that I thought were needed to be brought. I introduced new departments, quite a number of them. We have been talking about rural development, and I thought talking about it, not doing anything about it, was not helping. It was important to focus, and therefore established a department. I also worked on establishing another one, which was performance monitoring and evaluation, because it was clear to me that at the presidency, our main task is to supervise government. And if we are to supervise government properly, you need to have a mechanism that you could really look at government at every level, at all three levels of government. I also established others as well. I can't count all of them, I'm just mentioning these few. But I also implemented what had always been my view, that as a country we need a plan that is overarching of the country, and worked for the National Development Plan and succeeded to have it the manner in which we have, so that the country, whatever all of us, whatever we do, we know where we are going, what is our objectives. Those are some of the things that I have done, in a sense contributing from where others left. As you know, from President Mandela to President Mbeki, they had done work in establishing government. So I was contributing to that. In other words, bringing capacity and clarity on what we need to do. So there are a number of things that I can say I've tried to do. I made ministers to sign performance agreements. We report on a regular basis, on a quarterly basis, the outcomes that have been put in clusters of government, so that we know where we are lacking behind, where we are doing whatever. So it has been very specific things that I've done. In fact, there are quite many that I've done in terms of trying to say, how do we achieve our objective? As a cadre put into this responsibility, I thought it was important that I worked hard to find specific things that will be very visible, that this is what we need to do, and influence a particular direction. How do we go forward? So I'm very happy. There was one department of education, and there were a lot of problems, particularly with matric. I splitted this government, this department, created two departments, indeed establishing the basic education, because it was my view that us in particular, who were put out of the proper system of education in the past, the black people, particularly Africans, they did not have the proper foundation. This is what you will get exposed as they finish matric, and that's why there were a lot of dropouts, etc. But I felt we needed to focus more, spend more time, have a clear system at the foundation, and even went to focus on the young children, even before they go to school. How do you prepare them to go to school? I think that has made us to see the change. And I've said to people, insofar as the results of matric, that they are now growing. They can't fluctuate anymore because they are now moving from a very firm foundation. I think these are some of the things that we have done in the process. And if you run a government, particularly from a country that has been oppressed for a long time, you have a lot that we have got to do when other countries have been doing it for years. Particularly if you are in South Africa, a country that suffered from a very bad policy of apartheid, which was institutionalized. And therefore you have got to deal with that. One of the problems that people forget if they talk about South Africa, they criticize government as if this government has created these problems. They fail to realize that in fact we are dealing with the terrible legacy of apartheid, and these are the things we have done in order to deal with the matter. In other countries, there's no problem about matric. People have not asked themselves why in South Africa there's a problem. There's a problem because of the education system that was there for all the time. In other countries, there was no question of failures in matric, etc., because there was no need for that, because the systems were there. Here, we deal with a different kind of thing. So if you were to evaluate and look at the performance of the South African government, the democratic one, I think people must bear that in mind. They often forget that because it is easy to criticize.
President Zuma, you've recently spoken about attempts to take your life, and in particular an incident of poisoning. Do you care to tell me more about
I don't think
what happened?
I don't think I can tell you more about that. This happened, the thing that I've said, it is very recent. I was talking to ANC members because I was trying to explain to them where we are as a country, where we are as an organization, and why. Also talking about the balance of forces, not just nationally or continentally, but globally. It was in that context that I mentioned this because I wanted to crystallize the point. What is it that's happening? How far those who have views about us would go in order to ensure that we move in a particular direction rather than the direction of addressing the problem that face our people. So this is what I was saying. And I touch upon this because it is a reality. I was poisoned, but I wouldn't want to get into those details right now. I'm sure at the right time I will. But I was. Some people wanted me dead. And indeed, it was quite a strong poison. And I did go through quite a challenging time.
Many people have said President Zuma is the enemy of white capital, or President Zuma is the enemy of foreign leaders. Can you explain, Mr. President, to say, in your view, the people who wanted to take your life, are they foreign? Is it foreign politics, or is it just geo-national politics that tried to harm you?
Well, I joined the struggle when I was very young. And when I joined the struggle, and particularly when the struggle took another level of the armed struggle, the apartheid regime declared me and many others as the enemy of the state. So that is not a new thing. Not just that they did so, they actually arrested me, convicted me to prison, and I served a long term in prison. South Africa, of course, has its friends globally. I was explaining this to the ANC members so that they should understand, because if you fight for freedom, many people sacrificed their lives, and you are free now, you are around. You have to understand that this freedom must be defended. You can't just allow it to disappear. And if you are not clear about who's who and what's a balance of forces, we are not going to be able to defend it. I think it is the duty of all of us who know to explain to our colleagues what is it that we need to do. So people who said Zuma is an enemy is an old matter, and I think I know exactly who are the people who say so, and perhaps people who could do the kind of thing that was done to me. But that's part of what the struggle is. That's why you don't just end up with freedom when you have the vote, political, what you call freedom, etc. And that's why you say the struggle continues, because there are many things that we need to deal with, as well as how to defend your country and therefore your freedom, how to change the quality of lives of your people. Other people might not want you to do so, because if you do so, if you grow your economy, then you become stronger. You can resist many other things, so they would want you to be weaker all the time. I would imagine, as the ANC, I share the ANC views that I've been with all the time, and I'll defend those, and then I will never give in, because the ANC has very clear policies that we have got to implement in order to change the situation for the better, particularly for the majority who happen to be black. And therefore, those who call me their enemies, it's their choice, as it was with apartheid. Insofar as the white monopoly capital, I think the issue to me is very simple. If you have a history of South Africa where the majority was deprived of everything, and this is what people don't like us to say, but it's a fact. It's not a manufactured story. We are not mad. We are telling the truth. And this is what, as a freedom fighter, we fought for. And we are not saying something we don't know. They took everything, the power, political power, which we now have, but economic power, the land, everything. When we say there is a monopoly, if you take, let us take the mines. People who dominate, companies who dominate in the mines, there are not many who really are benefiting. There are very few. Whether you go to gold or diamond or platinum or whatever, manganese or whatever, you will find the same companies in charge. Now, that means they are dominating. That means they are monopolizing economy. They are therefore the monopolies. And they are not black. The companies are not black. You have got companies today that are basically white. They start from the biggest commodities to the broom. Their names are written there. They are monopolizing every space of the economy. It's a fact. They are monopolies. I don't know why shouldn't they be called by what they practice. And I don't know why there's a debate, in fact. Because there is a monopoly capital, and in South Africa it is white. In all other countries they've got monopoly, it doesn't have color as such. But here, because of our history, it does have a color. It is white. If you look at the land, stretches of land, which was land that belonged to the majority, that was changed. It is minority that dominates. And that's why we are saying these are monopolies. And it's not an insult. It's just explaining the position of the economy. Who is owning bigger, who is poor. That's what it talks about.
President Zuma, you cite very well that there are those who consider you an enemy. And many of those people are, in foreign countries. Some of them are perhaps even in the ANC, or some of them, use people in the ANC. Are you not concerned that your enemies or those who tried to poison you might attempt to infiltrate the elective conference or dictate a leader in December, the leader of the ANC?
Well, I wouldn't want to dwell much on that issue, but it's safe to say, yes, there are some countries for their own global policies and interests that do look at some leaders in Africa as their enemy, and I'm one of those. And it is an accepted thing or a known thing that if they want to undermine a country, they use the citizens of those countries. In other words, they buy them, they recruit them, they use them to undertake their own. They would also want to choose the people they would want to lead the country, who might agree to their policies, or people that they might actually control. So that is a general thing in Africa. It's not like a secret. It's a generally known. Former colonial countries wanted to influence former colonies in one form or the other for their own interests. And at times, it depends. They will actually do things. You know, in Africa for quite a few decades, there used to be coup d'etats in Africa. But they were engineered by people from outside. In other words, to change government so that they put people who will support them. I don't think South Africa will be immune from such a thing. It's a reality, because they always, I'm not leaving aside what we know or what I know, just putting it as a general kind of practice that has in fact plagued Africa for a long time. At times changing even the issue of elections, how people influence elections in one form or the other, how those people have their preferences in terms of individuals. There may be other things involved there, but that's what happens. I don't think you could say South Africa is not affected by that. But I think in South Africa, what has been a difficulty to many of them is that ANC has been too strong. It's an old organization. In fact, they've been wishing that the ANC should disappear. But the ANC has been very strong. I think they've been trying every method to weaken the ANC, to create disagreements, to create friction within the ANC, to influence factions, etc. It's not just, when people look at these things happening, you might think that it's just people, perhaps what's wrong with these people? But actually there are forces that are always there, trying to influence confusion and misleading people so that they can have the things in their own way, so that they can be satisfied that they're in control. So that one is a reality that we cannot run away from.
Speaking of the elective conference, the Deputy President of the African National Congress has on several platforms openly spoken about money that is doing the rounds to encourage voting or bidding for the elective conference. I'm interested to find out from you, Mr. President, what is your response with the question of money being used to buy votes?
No, without responding to the Deputy President, I'm sure many people have talked about the use of money to influence things. Again, the foreign countries are culprits, as well as people within the country, that people do buy people. Is a thing that everybody talks about. But I think what people have not said, who gives the money. That is a different matter, which needs its own investigation and perhaps discussions.
Or inquiry.
Inquiry, absolutely. But the fact of the matter is that it's now a well-known fact that people are given money, are bought, so that they can help to promote the interests of other people, either individual. Some people do this without knowing. Some do it consciously knowing what they are doing.
For a man who's been a member of the ANC for over 50 years, what do you want to be remembered for, President Zuma?
No, I can't again say I want to be remembered for this, no. I think people, if at all they wanted to remember me, they will remember me. There was this fellow who came from Kandla, in the rural areas, joined the struggle at a young age, went all out, ready to die, and with time developed in the ANC through the ranks, and finally reached the level of leadership. And when he was part of the leadership, there are quite a number of things that happened that he was involved in. People will remember, whatever. I can't choose for them. But I have put my effort wherever I thought it was necessary. When the government was established, I participated. I started in the provinces and came to the national. So I've been there. Wherever I've been, I've tried to do whatever I can, not because I want people to remember, because it is the duty to ensure that you change the quality of lives. If you were able to stop violence, that in itself changed the quality of lives of people, because you almost had internal refugees, people who died, people who were angry, how to turn that around. And then, of course, you come to government. We have got to deal with the economy, because the economy is very bad. The structure of the economy in South Africa is structured from the apartheid kind of laws. How do we untangle and unpack this is a challenge that we are going to be faced with for a long time to come. But we've been putting the effort on those things. I think people must look at what the ANC has done rather than individuals, because we all contribute in the policies of the ANC. There's nothing that we originate and do miracles. All leaders of the ANC, no matter how smart they have been, they were implementing the policies of the ANC. And they did everything for the ANC. And I think you'll recall that Tata Mandela used to say he will always be the ANC, almost to the fact that when his days end in this earth, when he get to heaven, first thing we look for will be the branch of the ANC. That tells you the ANC is the main thing. And at times you judge individuals of who they are, what capacity they have, by the manner in which their attitude is towards the ANC. So everything that we do it in the name of the ANC. And that is what it is. And I think people must look at what the ANC has done since independence, during the struggle, since independence. There could, of course, therefore be some individuals that were more outstanding, like President Tambo, President Mandela, which is fine. These were great leaders. Many of us who were cadres just contributed, following our leaders, contributing to strengthen the ANC, unite the ANC, but also to ensure that we do things that must change South Africa for the better.
When you spoke at the ANC's 105th birthday in January this year, it sounded almost as if, Mr. President, you wanted radical economic transformation to be your legacy project. As your term ends as president of the ANC, do you want also to be remembered for radical economic transformation?
Radical socio-economic transformation is the policy of the ANC. As the cadre of the ANC, as the leader of the ANC, you have to implement the policies of the ANC. So for me, talking about radical socio-economic transformation, it's not that I'm talking about my thing. I'm talking about the policy of the ANC. In other words, sharpening the implementation of the policies of the ANC. Not that I want this to be my legacy. It's a legacy of the ANC. I think what would be important is that perhaps at a given time, the ANC decided to say, We need radical socio-economic transformation as the ANC. We as cadres, once the resolution is taken, we've got to implement it. And if I'm the president, I've got to lead that. That is why when we went to Mangaung, we had to crystallize this. And of course, for some time, people did not necessarily highlight it that much. And at a particular time, I thought it was important as a leader to clarify this as much as possible. That is why I even tried to define it so that people must know what is it that we are talking about. Because other people, when we're talking about radical economic transformation, that's what are they talking about? Others were saying, well, they're just talking about this to cover their corruption, etc. So we had to tell people so that everybody must be clear. But more importantly, members of the ANC must be clear. What is it that we are talking about? What is that we want to do? But the country as well must be clear that this is not a weird policy. It's a policy to correct the past. So it is absolutely crucial. And the ANC must follow this policy. Because if you don't, you are going to stay in poverty, in inequality for a long time. So for us to shorten the destination to this, let us deal with the economy of the country differently.
Let's talk about state capture, Mr. President. There's a growing narrative in this country that you and the Gupta family have contributed to all of the corruption in this nation. But similarly, they also overlook the growing rand manipulation, collusion, white-collar crime that is perpetuated by big business in this country. And the Competition Commission releases report after report of white-collar crimes by big capital, and no one speaks about that. Why is it that the narrative of state capture, particularly concerning the man Jacob Zuma and the Gupta family, has won the headlines in this country?
The state is made of three pillars. It is the executive, parliament, the legislature, and the judiciary. If you loosely put this term and say, as a state capture, you are actually saying the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, they are captured. It's a wrong meaning of what people are saying. But they do this for political reasons, so that you believe there's no parliament that is captured. There's no executive that is captured. Because even what they've tried to say are evidence of that. They are talking about few individuals that they can, but state capture. That's political propaganda. Instead of singling out those who are captured, I'm sure if you remember when the story about Nkandla started, Zuma has chowed so many millions. There were 3 investigations. They found nothing. Absolutely nothing. Finally, I think it was the public protector who said, well, because of certain items, Zuma and his family indirectly benefited. Not that Zuma stole money. But up to now, up to today, people think that Zuma, if you talk about corruption, is Nkandla. But there's nothing factual. It's just political. Then the public protector says, maybe he must pay something about this indirect benefiting. She doesn't say how much Zuma must pay. She then says 2 ministers, the police and finance, will have to determine. And I wait for the determination. I wait for a long time. But I'm being punished that I did not pay. I was now being funny to my oath. But how much was I going to pay? Because I was waiting for the determination. At a given time, a minister of police made his own determination. There was no, he can't pay because it was that department that said these items must be made. So he made a determination. And of course, I'm just telling you, you try to say, what is it that Zuma has done? It has gone to court, but of course the judgment comes and create an impression that this Zuma has done so much. I'm just saying, there are many things. When I established the Commission of Inquiry, one of the things they will have to clarify, what is a state capture? I'm sure I will be very keen to know. Is that phrase correct? Because if at all some people they capture you or me, they must say so. They can't just make it sound so important, so big, the state capture. We know what a state is if you define it. Nobody has said there are judges, there is a whole parliament is captured. There's nothing, but nobody asked that question. And I'm sure the Judicial Commission of Inquiry is one of the issues they will have to clarify. To say, in fact, it was all a fake, political, just painting black a particular family and a particular few individuals. We all repeat it, in fact, as a state capture report. But the state is not captured. Because if you capture state, capture the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. Now, I'm just telling you that you have kind of stories that at times, as they were repeated and repeated, they look like they're true. Why? I'm sure one day we'll know. And I am going to establish the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. And it's going to investigate this. That's why even the clarification about state capture, what does it mean, will be very important, because somebody must say, how has the state been captured? But it's not going to end there. We are dealing with the corruption in general. And that Judicial Commission of Inquiry is going to investigate corruption, because there's a lot of corruption. For an example, there are companies that almost have the kind of agreements that they have, which they are called evergreen, whilst other people can't enter that area because it's no longer the law. It's just a practice that there are people who are dominating, who are monopolizing, and therefore, no, you can't get in. Why should we do that? But there are many things that have happened.
But why then, Mr. President, do you think the state of capture report came and was what it was? As inconclusive as you say it was, why did Ms. Madonsela release that state of capture report as it was?
Well, I can't answer because I'm sure she knows better why that was done. Just paint people's names and leave because, I mean, many people were still waiting to be interviewed so that they can clarify their positions. There was I think there was a political reason that this report was supposed to be used to deal with a number of other people. I think so.
Can it be said, Mr. President, that the former public protector had taken over a political role and the state of capture report was then someone's political arm or political weapon towards you and other members of the ANC?
No, I wouldn't want to make that assumption. I think the Judicial Commission of Inquiry will clarify all of that. I wouldn't want to make allegations that because this is what I think or whatever. I think we need to deal with, because those kind of questions, and I'm sure if the Commission of Inquiry is doing the real investigations, I'm sure they should be able to say why was this particular investigation done in this way. I'm sure people like the public protector could help to clarify the issues at that very time. I'm saying it is the investigation that will tell us what actually happened. I can't say I suspected the public protector to be political, not at all. He was doing their job. We could not agree with the manner in which he did. And I'm sure the investigation could tell us
The Judicial Commission of Inquiry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Talking about the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, Mr. President, you've highlighted that many people are going to be implicated, particularly those who are very loud today, speaking about state capture, will be implicated when the Judicial Commission of Inquiry has its day. Can you maybe give me an indication? Are there people in the ANC who will be implicated?
No, I was answering questions in Parliament. I did not say they will be implicated. No. I was explaining that there is going to be a commission of inquiry with broad kind of terms of reference that will cover everything, because we don't want to leave anything. And through that process, I am sure those who are corrupt, they will come out. And that's a point I was saying. I was saying even those who are saying let it come, who are using political phrases to say let it come, they might regret. In fact, no, I said they will regret. That's the point I made, because it's not going to be choosy. It's going to go to those who have done wrong things. That's the point I was making. Certainly, I am aware as the president of this country that there are things that need to be investigated. Others have been investigated. I have fought corruption. I think I have signed the SIU proclamations. The number that I've signed, nobody has ever signed so much. Fighting corruption. But it is said I'm more corrupt than anyone. There are people who did not necessarily do so. I have done that. So I'm also aware of what is happening in government, being where I am. When I made that statement to say some people will regret, I mean it. Because it's not going to be like a narrow thing as it was done for the state capture report. Very narrow, investigate X, Y, Z. It's going to be broader. Everybody is going to be whoever is corrupt. That's the point I was making.
Is it then possible that the white corporations or big business in South Africa, those who participate in collusion, rent fixing, white collar crime, will also have to account in the Judicial Commission of Inquiry? Because often when we speak of government, we call it corruption, but in the private sector it's called white collar crime and all other terminologies. Yeah. Do you think that big business will have to account within the Judicial Commission of Inquiry?
The Judicial Commission of Inquiry will investigate, terms of reference will indicate. And I'm merely saying we are going to investigate and investigate very thoroughly. If Zuma is corrupt, it's going to be found by this commission. It's not going to be something manipulated. It's going to be very open, and it's going to go to wherever that people can say there's corruption here. No matter what organization you belong to, no matter what business you belong to.
Mr. President, let's talk about land. One of the burning issues in your administration has been the expropriation of land with or without compensation. And that the term of reference for that is Section 25 of the Constitution. Now, in Parliament, you had given the right to accept a percentage from other political parties, particularly the EFF, in order to change the Constitution or amend the Constitution to change Section 25 in order to expropriate land without compensation. That was turned down by the ANC MPs. However, South Africans still want land. How do you respond to that, Mr. President?
Well, firstly, the question of land. The ANC has a very clear policy. And people forget that one of the causes of the struggle was land. So it can't just disappear. And with time, I think we reached a point where we could work on the policy, clear policy, we had a constitution, because we knew that these matters must be resolved. From immediately after 1994, we had a policy, which we thought was a policy to help us move on this issue. The question of willing seller, willing buyer. And that was done, but it could not succeed because the issue is more serious. What then we are saying, because in the Constitution, there is the clause that talk about appropriation. So we say, let us correct the question of the land within the law, within the Constitution. The Constitution allows that. And therefore, this is one of the options that as we talk, we must deal with. We want to have a more legal way of dealing with it. The point I was making in Parliament was that if it needs to change the law or amend the Constitution for that matter, and I said the land was taken from the black people. Black parties must vote together. I said it. I was addressing the traditional leaders because it is a serious matter. If this matter is not resolved, it could be a time bomb that will explode down the line. We need, as a democratic country, to find a way where we all agree how to do it. Not to do it to please certain people, but to solve the problem of the people who own no land, who own no means of production, the poverty, inequality, the poverty was brought particularly to us, black people, by the land that was taken away. And you can't solve those issues, inequality, unemployment today, without resolving the land question. Even our efforts to industrialize, without space, without land, even that kind of program will be very restricted. So it is a critical point. South Africans should accept. We are not saying let us take the land from those who possess it, but we're saying we can't have people who own all the land when other people don't have it. And they're citizens, they've got rights also to utilize the land. That's a matter we're talking about. Let us come together, work together to solve the problem. There's no need to fight about it as if you say, I don't want this issue, it's going to disappear. Because those who are hungry, those who have nothing, what must they do? So all we are saying, let us not use wrong methods. That is why when in Parliament, there was a question of the EFF, the ANC did not vote with EFF because EFF has a thing that occupy the land, get in there. I think the ANC was feeling there's no clarity here. And also, if EFF was experienced knowing what to do, they ought to have sat down with the ANC and said, look, this is what we are doing. These are the reasons, and we're going to do it this way. You can't just say, we are making a proposal, vote with us, without even engaging. That was a problem. Because you can't say because the land is a common point that we are fighting for. Therefore, automatically, particularly if you come from the background, wherein you send people to say, just go and occupy the land. That's not dealing with the issue of the land from within the framework that is acceptable. So that was a problem.
Why is it then, Mr. President, that in 23 years of democracy, less than 5% of the land has been expropriated? Even with the policies in place, land has still not been delivered to black people? Or is there a non-compliance from the white population for land expropriation?
I think it is the manner in which we dealt with it. I think, as I say, the policy that was really leading was government will buy the land from those who own it and give it to those who don't have it and those who claim it, the willing buyer, willing seller. But as you can hear, it's a very soft way and user-friendly way of solving the problem within a particular framework. But if the seller is not willing, what do you do? Because we did not have a number of people saying we are willing to sell, here we are, this is so is the land so much. Only those were willing to. Now, in other words, we are saying this method doesn't, because it depends on the individual. If an individual is not willing, stays with this huge, huge land. So we are saying, let us work out another method still user-friendly, still within the framework of the law, but to deal with it properly, to be effective, in a sense, to address the problem, not to talk about it and just to solve it in a manner that you can't solve it. We also did not say if the land is bought, is given to people. We opened two options. You occupy it, but if you want, you can get money. I think we should have had a very clear system that once the land is given back, no question of the money must come. The land comes back, you use it. Because land is economic thing that you have. And land must be used by you and the generations to come. If you take the money, you sell it, you take the money, you are going to use the money, it's finished, you are back to square one. Because the land must guarantee, if we have got land, you can even borrow money, you can do everything. So we now say we need to have a very clear program that those who get the land, they must not get rid of it or get more poor because they did not use it. We have now seen that if we give it to them, they can't use it. And therefore, government must have a program that is going to compel them not to get rid of their property. So that is what we are looking at. There are many things we would want to do to ensure that the issue of the land is addressed properly.
Some time back, Mr. President, you gave an order to former Minister of Education, Mr. Blaine Zimande, to make sure that free education comes. You also contacted Mr. Pravin Gordhan, former Minister of Finance, to make the resources available for free education. That still has not come, and the students still call for free education. What will happen, Mr. President?
Well, firstly, that policy, the policy of the ANC, it has taken resolutions in many conferences, leaving aside what is in the Freedom Charter many, many decades ago. We are very clear. The issue of education is absolutely important in this country. Education is one instrument that empowers a nation. If you take our history and how education was addressed, we cannot delay the question of education, that people must be empowered. And that's why the ANC has been taking these resolutions. Now, what becomes important, how do we implement the policies of the ANC? Now, we can't, of course, just implement it overnight. We've got to take into account the state of the economy, many other things. That is why we established, when there was a debate and strikes, we thought we should establish a commission of inquiry that must carefully look at this question. How could we resolve this? Not whether we should agree whether they should free education or not. That is a policy. How do we implement it? Part of the elements to implement it is to have money. And this is what has happened. The commission has given a report and it has made the recommendations. But those recommendations has made us to look at them carefully so that we are able to do what we will achieve, what we want to achieve. And at the moment, we are considering that as government and the other stakeholders so that we can address that issue. And not long, we will be saying what is our final point on the recommendations that the Commission has made.
Mr. President, can I draw your attention to a discussion on the alliance, COSATU and the Communist Party? There is a threat out there that if the leader selected by COSATU and the SACP does not win in December, then there will be consideration of another coalition, which means there might be another party or a split from the ANC. How do you respond to that? Is it a threat to the ANC? Are we seeing a new party develop perhaps drawing in disgruntled members of the current ANC? Don't you consider that a threat, Mr. President?
Well, I wouldn't know how much serious that assertion is that is being made. I think ANC people in the alliance have a deeper understanding about where the country must go. But with an experience of what happened in Polokwane, wherein there was never a thought that a new organization could emerge, and we ended up with COPE. You can't therefore say, no, that is just a pipe dream. Although I don't think it is that easy, because that experience itself must have taught people, if they're politically clear, that it is not just easy that you wish to form a party, you form a party and you succeed. Because those who formed COPE, at the beginning COPE looked like it was an organization that is going to be very serious, but I think it has shrunk almost to few individuals today. If you want to take that route, to go through that experience is one thing. But of course people might be, with the support of some forces, they might want to do so. There are forces who are not necessarily wanting any split because they think some better policy will emerge. ANC has superior policies. But there are forces who actually wanted to see the ANC and the alliance weakened. And to weaken that, because it has been very strong, you must utilize people from within. Because it will be very sad that people who are part of the organization, because they reach a point where their candidate does not win, something which is a routine in democracy, because there are elections all the time, you then want to leave the organization. It's funny. It says a lot about you as an individual. What is it that you are looking for? However, I don't think that is going to happen. I think we've just met recently the alliance through the political council, where we're discussing some of the challenges among ourselves. And we have agreed to discuss, and without getting into the details, what we discussed is that unity between the alliance is absolutely important, given our destination, our objectives, given also the understanding of our opponents and enemies, that we need to work together. That has been said in a very recent kind of situation. We are therefore united in terms of we need to reorganize, unite, so that we can be able to move forward together. That's what we have said. I don't think the talk, although I haven't heard it to that extent, the talk about the candidate of either COSATU or the party, I think what they've said, they will support a particular candidate. That's their view. For their own reasons, they have a right to do so. And they are expressing that as alliance partners. It's not a normal thing. This is not normally, but it tells you the march of times. But I think once the ANC takes a decision, what is our culture? Once one leader is elected, we all fall behind the leader so that we make the leader to succeed. Next time it would be another one, next time it could be another one. It's a strange thing that if your candidate is defeated, then you wanted to form another organization. Very strange political thinking.
Mr. President, the Deputy President of the African National Congress released his slate last week. Now, in the year of unity and in the year of Oliver Tambo, where the common message is do not endorse factions, the slate is out there. Why has the Integrity Commission not called in Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, I wouldn't be able to comment on that because the Integrity Commission discusses in its own way. I would imagine that was a political statement, a campaign of the Deputy President. I wouldn't want to comment also on that one. But all I know is that we are all agreed that we don't want factions. We are all saying we need to unite. We need to unite the ANC. We need to unite the alliance. And that is what we are saying. And therefore, I wouldn't want to comment on what other comrades are saying as they campaign in one form or the other. I think it would be unfair. But I think we are all agreed that we don't need factions. We need to unite the organization.
My closing question, Mr. President, do you have any intention of bringing the economic freedom fighters back into the ANC?
Well, we have not discussed that, about the EFF, whether they could come back to the ANC or not. I think the problem that EFF is faced with is that many people, particularly in its top leadership, come from the ANC. I don't think if you are in the ANC, we are able to create another policy better than that of the ANC. I think that's one of the dilemma of EFF. What can you say to the people of South Africa? We are better than the ANC. Please put us in government. People are not blind. They are not going to vote you because you are able to raise your voice more than any other people. They want to hear the content. And I think that's a difficulty that EFF is faced with. With time, because I don't think, because the EFF was created because its leader in particular and others move away from the ANC because of certain things. Not that they disagreed with the policies of the ANC. That possibility, I'm sure, at some point, political life is political life. It's not something I want to predict about. But I'm just saying, I'm sure at some point, people might come to their senses to say, is this helping the country really to be shouting one another every day instead of working together to change South Africa? Maybe, who knows? But I don't want to predict or make assumptions about it. But politics are politics. Who knew that Julius Malema, who was saying his blood, ANC is like his DNA, namhlanje, or today he
I will
do something
kill for
else.
Jacob Zuma.
You know? So I'm just saying these particular characters like those who can move in directions that we have never expected. So anything is possible. ANC has always been open, always opens the doors. ANC wants unity, wants many people to come together, to work together, to achieve our goals. So we are not going to say no to somebody who says, I'm ready to work with the ANC. But I can't predict the specifics on this one.
Mr. President, thank you very much for this exclusive interview. What will you be doing post-December?
Well, I will still be the president of the country, the state president, and I will still be working in government, therefore leading government. But of course, I will still be active in the ANC at the lower level, at the branch level. So I will still be active. The only thing I wouldn't be will be the president of the ANC. I will be the president only of the state.
A councillor of Nkandla, maybe?
Maybe, who knows? Because I've championed the fact that it does not mean if you were once a president, you can't be a councillor. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
And that was President Jacob Zuma, the president of the ANC. I am Sifiso Mahlangu, and this is Straight Talk in ANN7's exclusive interview with the president. Channel 405 on DSTV. We are called ANN7. Thank you for watching. It's a goodbye from me.